All right. I want to go to my next guest, Esteban Carrillo. What's going on, man? You doing all right today?
Hi, Jamal. Good morning. I'm doing good.
I've
I'm doing
I've
good.
gotten
Good
so
to
much
see you.
better at rolling those R's. I don't know why. It just happened as soon as I stopped working at the company. Just Carrillo. No, man, I'm really glad to see you. I am
Same over here.
I think I share a bit your horror at what is taking place in Syria right now.
Yes.
For all of the talk of this pro democracy jihadists, and for all the talk of Assad as a dictator, so he must be removed, and this is democracy and everything else. What is happening right now in Syria is not democracy. It's far from it. Sectarian balance is erupting all throughout the country. They are killing minorities left and right, dragging. I can't even show the videos. I mean, there's a list of
It's
videos that
impossible. Yeah.
the mainstream media is completely ignoring. Like they have whitewashed it. And I get, right, Assad jails are horrible. Agreed.
Mhm.
I get that aside having Rolls Royce while everybody else is starving. Again, agreed. But let's be clear with who we just put into power.
Yes.
The guy's a the guy has the blood of Americans at the edge of his sword, and we are acting like, well, this is fantastic, or as John Kirby called it, birthing pains. Well, dude, it's easy for you to say. I'm sorry. I'm deeply bothered by what is taking place, and I'm deeply bothered by our role, meaning in the U.S. on
Mhm.
that. Before we step into it, let me get your take on it in general. What happened? I've been asking everybody who's come on the show on the subject just from their take because I have been watching and reading all sorts of stuff, and everybody has a different idea on what might have happened. And I want to get your take on that. Assad was warned, from my understanding, by Iran and by Russia. And this was one of the big questions I had because one of the gentlemen I had on, he knew about it. He was like, I've been warning about this for months. And apparently, the reporting is that so was Assad.
And he
Why
was getting
didn't
support.
he respond? Like, what was, give me your take on what was going on in his head in regards to why he didn't listen to what Russia and Iran
Yeah.
was telling him that this attack was coming.
Well, Assad had been. It was kind of like the end of like an announced the end, right? To his term, like we all kind of knew that the situation in Syria was not sustainable, or it was kind of surprising how long he managed to hold on to power, given the fact that this was a very corrupt government, right? I think just the fact that you saw the army disintegrate with absolutely no, it took the Taliban 3 months to do in Afghanistan what HTS and its allies did in Syria in 10 days. It's absurd, like to this day, I think for me, I'm still trying to wrap my head around exactly what happened. What I think your listeners need to understand is, well, the context, right? Like the recent Syrian geopolitical context. Syria had been welcomed back into the regional fold over the past couple of years, returned to the Arab League, normalized ties with the UAE, reopened the Saudi embassy. It felt like all of a sudden the U.S. Economic war and the actual war and then the economic war that was being waged against Syria with the Caesar Act, crushing sanctions on the country, it had stopped working, right? And after the Iran rapprochement between Iran and Saudi Arabia, you felt like things were looking up for Syria, right? And it feels like Assad bought into that. He bought into that completely because what we've been hearing from Iranians and Russians is that over the past few months there has been a high level of frustration in which they are warning him, this is brewing, this is happening, keep your eyes on Idlib and tell us when you need us to step in. And him, in one ear is this Iran, Russia, and then in the other ear is the Gulf nations telling him, no, the United States is ready to normalize with you, is ready to lift the sanctions. And you just, he's getting sweet talked by the Gulf nations. He's at the same time, he's being, depending on how you look at it, either defending Syrian sovereignty or just being stubborn in his reactions to Turkey trying to normalize, right? Turkey for the past year and a half, 2 years, Turkey has a very large military presence in the north of Syria. for the past several years they've had. They are waging war against Kurdish armed groups, which are allied with the United States. So Turkey has, for the past year and a half, been almost one unilaterally, just the one side, been saying we're about to sit down with Damascus. We are close to reaching, discussions to normalize to because in their eyes, or in the public eyes, what they want to do is to return the refugees, right? Turkey is the country with the highest number of refugees in Syria. So this is kind of what they use, right? This is kind of what they use as the reason for wanting to normalize. In reality, Turkey, I think, as we saw this weekend, had other designs. So Assad has been doing this, as Turkey is doing this, Assad has been, okay, we'll sit down when you remove the troops from the north, right? This was always Damascus's answer to Turkey. And the Turkey, the attempts at normalizing with Turkey brokered by Russia, right? So you at this point can also see Assad doesn't seem to be listening to his allies as, just not listening to them as closely as maybe as he might have. And what happened over the weekend is just, it's sacrificing Syria at the altar of Israel, because there's many winners here. There's many winners, many losers as well. But the most apparent and immediate winner is Israel, because Israel all of a sudden is completely in control of the Golan Heights and beyond, right? They parked their tanks just kilometers outside Damascus. They reached 10 kilometers outside Damascus, and then they retreated. I think at this point they are stationed at 40 or something kilometers outside Damascus, but they are stationed now not just on the southern Lebanese border, they're stationed on the eastern Lebanese border. So you weaken Hezbollah by killing, just scores of civilians in Lebanon, destroying buildings across the entire country. And then you unleash ISIS. You unleash ISIS on Syria, and you take control of the eastern Lebanese border. And all of a sudden, because we know ISIS, we know Al-Qaeda, they never attack Israel, right? They never attack Israel. These are like Sunni Islamist movements that at no point have taken up a weapon and said, we will defend Palestine. We will defend the Palestinians. They never have, and they never will. So they are working on the side of Israel. They are working on the side of the Empire Project. And as you were saying, Jamal, Assad, not a complicated figure, to say the least. Obviously, you mentioned about the prisons and about the riches he amassed, what we are seeing, from his family, etc., his family home, and all of that. I don't think any of that excuses unleashing ISIS, unleashing these extremist groups to take control of the country, they themselves name a prime ministers, and they themselves be involved in the nation building, right? The Syrian revolution might have a revolution during the first few days in 2011, around the time of the Arab Spring, but it was quickly co-opted and malformed and changed into something else, right? Into attempts at destabilizing a country that is a significant link in first of all, in the axis of resistance, and second of all, just in the region, right? Regionally, Syria stands at a very strategic position that all of a sudden is in the hands of Israel, Turkey, and the United States. This is how Syria is today divided, right? All the way in the northwest, all the way down to Aleppo and beyond, is Turkey. From the south is Israel. And in the east, you still have the United States, who have now their boogeyman, ISIS. First of all, half of them in government, the other half in the desert, ready to strike at any moment, because the sacrifice of Syria is nothing else but a step on the way towards the war with Iran. This is where we are headed. We are barreling straight towards war with Iran. There is absolutely no other way to look at this. And now, what are the steps, right? The steps now are Iraq, are Yemen, are maybe even Lebanon again, hopefully not, and Iran, finally, right? And I think this is also Many people have been saying this is the end of the axis of resistance. I think this is the end of this era of the axis of
Mhm.
resistance, right? Because now you may have still some fighters in Gaza, right, that are fighting the Israeli army.
Right.
But at this point, the Holocaust, that has been unleashed in Gaza is of such calamity and of such magnitude that this is not sustainable, right? The Qassam brigades, at some point, this is just gonna end.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. They're isolated at this point, right? I
Yes,
mean, Hezbollah was effectively attacking with this notion of putting pressure on Israel to come to some kind of deal in order to basically stop. We'll stop if you stop.
yes,
Hezbollah makes a deal in order to, I mean, for obvious reasons, right? They were being blackmailed. Beirut was being bombed continuously. They were indiscriminately killing civilians. And I would imagine Hezbollah needed a breather, just like Israel needed a breather. Israel had been beaten to a standstill in southern Lebanon and had taken serious losses. All right. Hezbollah makes the deal. Then they decide, okay, now we can undercut Syria. And they go into Syria with this. Do you think I was watching Jelani give a speech, and they asked him, they pointed out to him, hey, Israel is attacking Syria. One of his people were like, Israel is attacking Syria. They're carving up Syria. They're destroying the armaments. And Jelani was like, yeah, well, we can't really fight any more wars. And it's like, but wait a minute. Lebanon fought Israel to a standstill. Israel had tanks and everything else. These guys had tanks, armaments, like they had a proper army. And I mean, army like US made weaponry, tanks, APB vehicles, all of that stuff as they were rolling in. So this wasn't just a random bunch of guys with just guns. This was a proper kit. Um, and he's like, yeah, we can't do anything about it. What it put me in mind of was Lenin in Germany, where Germany was fighting a war. Germany needed to undermine Russia to get Russia out of that war. And they sent Lenin into Russia with this idea of almost being a bomb to destabilize the Russian government. And it did. It took, what, 2 times or so, but eventually it was able to destabilize the Russian government. And for payment, they were able to carve up Russia. Like,
yes.
meaning Tsar's Russia lost a large chunk of Tsar's Russia in process of Lenin taking over. It put me in the mind of that. The moment that he gets in, Israel comes in, destroys all of the armaments associated with Syria, meaning Syria has no capability of defending itself, whatever government it comes up with, and is effectively like, okay, hands-off policy for Israel. So despite the fact that they're 20 kilometers or 40 kilometers from Damascus, his take is hands off.
Yeah.
That doesn't seem like arbitrary to me. Give me your take on that. Do you think the fix was in? I mean, Israel has had relationships with the terrorist organizations. I mean, that stuff is well documented at this point. What is your thought?
Israel years ago was providing field treatment to Al Qaeda fighters. During the early years of the Syrian war. As I said, ISIS, Al Qaeda, they never attack Israel, right? They never attack the Zionist state. They always attack Israel's enemies, which is, I think, that's just enough. That's all you need to know. The thing that happened with the military equipment, Israel launched anywhere between 350 to 500 airstrikes on Syria. I've seen both figures in 48 hours. It's an absurd amount of destruction that they unleashed over the heads of the Syrians who were celebrating over, the victory of the revolution, I guess, or just the fall of Assad, which is, as I said, we need to like two things can be bad at the same time, right? Like one bad thing doesn't make the other good, and vice versa. But now Syria is naked, essentially, right? Syria had been coming under attack from Israel for a long time, years, hundreds and hundreds of airstrikes just this year. Remember when the earthquake happened in Syria, Israel was bombing the airports that were delivering humanitarian aid. So now you have these people in power who are unwilling and unable to launch any attack against any other nation, which may be good since you're talking about ISIS. But also, if you're liberating your country, shouldn't you at least try to defend your borders, right? Like the moment they start taking in the south, but then you realize, oh, well, they don't care. Right? They obviously don't care. This is not about. This is not what it's about for them. I think another thing that you need to consider is now Syria. First of all, right? These terrorists turned liberators have said we are going to turn Syria into a free market economy. This is one
I
of the
saw
first,
that. Yeah.
from a state-controlled economy to a free market economy. And then what are they going to need first? They're going to need weapons. Right? So it's always a good day to be an arms manufacturer, right? It's always a good day. Never bad days for Lockheed Martin and for Boeing and for all of the money that is going to all of a sudden appear for Syria, like they did at one point for Ukraine, obviously with much less, right? Much less. If Jordan can dress like Zelensky all he wants, he's not Zelensky. He's not going to get the same amount of money or even recognition. But at this point, everything is in flux. Everything's fluid. Everything can happen, and that has been the case for since Assad left Damascus. That has been the feeling that anything can happen at this point. The axis of resistance has, unfortunately, as successful as many of their operations and even battles have been, right? In the case of Hezbollah reaching a stalemate essentially with Israel, or in the case of Yemen, that has been kind of the biggest surprise of this entire crisis, of this entire war. They have continuously been on the back foot as a whole. The axis of resistance has continuously been reacting instead of taking action. And that has been the opposite for their enemies. That has been the opposite for the Zionist state and for the US, that have been incredibly proactive to the point that, what happened here in Syria, and this is maybe where I'm going to start getting into the murkier territory, or when did it start, right?
Yeah.
To me, personally, it started with the murder of, and now I say murder, of the former president of Iran, Ibrahim Raisi. Because
you think he was murdered?
I think he was murdered. I think what happened in Syria at this point leaves many questions about what happened that day with that helicopter.
Explain that. Why do you? I mean, okay, because I accept that's a possibility. I mean, Israel could have performed an operation and nobody even knew that the operation was taking place. It just went
Jamal, just everything okay, obviously this is conspiracy, right? I'm not claiming that I know anything. This is just me trying to put the pieces together, but I keep coming back to the pager attack, to the pager terrorist attack in Lebanon. Remember how that happened, and remember the information that came out after about how long this had been planned. This is, who knows what else had been planned for even longer. Right? And we know that the Mossad and the Israeli intelligence, they have the support of every single agency in the world. The Mossad is not like Hezbollah, right? That has to always be, I guess, hiding their footsteps and looking at all sides. The Mossad has the support of everyone. So who is really behind what happened, right? Who is the one that benefits the most? And I think, there are many suspects at this point. You can point the hand at the US, right? The United States, at this point, right, in this transitional period with a lame duck president, let's just set the stage for Iran. Let's just set the stage for the next war. You can point the finger, obviously, at Israel, one of the biggest winners. Turkey obviously did something behind the scenes, preparing, right? HTS, the Syrian National Army, all of these former ISIS and Al Qaeda affairs, Uyghur terrorists, Uzbeki terrorists are now in Syria, giving speeches inside mosques, inside like different mosques, as you said. They are killing people in the street. They are harassing people in Damascus, asking, are you Sunni? Are you Shia? Are you Christian? Are you Druze? Are you, identify yourself? Turkey obviously still has dreams of the Ottoman Empire. Erdogan has his dreams of being the Sultan of controlling an empire. And he's more than willing to get in bed with Israel to do it, right? Turkey is a NATO partner. Turkey has been providing Israel with Azerbaijani gas, oil, non-stop throughout the genocide in Gaza, despite what Erdogan says. Turkey imposes tariffs, or a trade ban with Israel, and then immediately gives companies a waiver for that same ban. Right. So you have it there. You have the Gulf nations who have been so quiet, so like trying to just stay out in the shadows, giving out these statements about that we need, to see a government, whatever, in Syria formed.
Yeah.
Saudi Arabia, the UAE, it does feel like this is, as I said first, setting the stage for the war on Iran, and second of all, it's an attempted death blow at the axis of resistance. And we'll have to see how they react now. And to just to answer your question about Ibrahim Raisi, I feel like that was the moment. Many people are saying this started when Hassan Nasrallah was killed in Lebanon, right? When the former leader of Hezbollah was killed. I think no. I think at this point the plan was well into motion. It was well into motion, because I feel like if Ibrahim Raisi had remained in power, we might have seen a different Iran than we did over the past several months. I think Raisi was a much willing.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Raisi was a more willing. I would say he was more ready to join the fight in different ways than the president that Iran has now. Now, never mind. In Iran, the military decisions are taken by Ayatollah Khamenei, by the supreme leader. They're not taken by the president. But obviously, it helps to have a political understanding, right? And you're still talking about a country of tens of millions of people that has an internal process and has an internal system.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Iranian intelligence has been compromised for a long time. We have seen it time and again. We saw it with the untimely death of Ibrahim Raisi, which Iran themselves said it was an accident. Although it's so fishy what happened that day, and it opened the door for so many possibilities, including what just happened in Syria. So I feel like if Iran hasn't done a deep cleanse of their intelligence and of their government, of their military and of their government, then they are about to get a big surprise, just like Hezbollah did with the Patriot attacks, and just like Syria did with this flash offensive from HTS, and more than the flash offensive, the empty promises that obviously Assad believed, the promises that he was gonna the day HTS reaches Damascus, the day the fighters take Damascus, hours earlier in Doha, you had a meeting of all of the regional foreign ministers, including the Russian and Iranian foreign minister, in which they draft, and the Turkish, in which they draft a proposal for a transitional process, in which they talk about how Syria should continue. And it doesn't it doesn't say Assad leaves tonight immediately. It says Assad stays in power for about 6 months until there's a peaceful transition of power. That obviously didn't happen, right? So my question here is just how much further is this evil alliance? I don't know what else to call it, willing to go? At this point, unleashing ISIS in the region. We are seeing the birth of ISIS 2.0 in Syria, on the Lebanese border, on the Iraqi border, on the Turkish border. They don't seem to care too much, right? They are happy because now ISIS is going to go against the Kurds. So now for Turkey, you have the Turkish army and you have the ISIS against the Kurds, just coming at them for both sides.
Well, pointing that out, they already have been. And apparently America brokered a deal between the Kurdish forces versus the Turkish-backed forces. Now, I guess that leads to my next question. How, this can't last, right? I mean, the reality of it is, the same way that Libya and Iraq fell apart, they have too many groups, too many men with guns. Like, for example, Giuliani. Let's say I take him at his word, which I don't. But let's say I take him at his word, that he's like, you know what, I've moderated. I went through a phase in my youth of chopping off heads, but I have now evolved to realize chopping off heads, there are better ways to settle the differences.
There are better ways.
I'm now gay friendly. I'm now diversity friendly. I love all of these other groups. Okay, let's say he's that. That has nothing to do with many of the other groups that are under arms. Like the official government has collapsed. There is no legitimacy to any of these governments. And the reality of it is, what is going to run, what is going to lead is who has power. And any individual gang, any individual group does not have to accept the government, meaning he can make that proclamation of, hey, let's not shoot people. Let's not drag people through the streets in the way that they've been doing. Let's not chop off heads of kids. Let's not do that stuff. That has nothing to do with these other groups doing those things, basically telling him to F off. Exactly. Meaning, if in the homes and what is it? It's like in Aleppo, I believe it was one of the other cities, where that ethnic cleansing had started almost immediately, regardless of what he said. And
Mhm.
so it boils down to this thing of like, for one, do they even have control of the situation? And do you expect this to effectively devolve? From my point of view, I expect it to fall apart. But give me your thoughts.
Well, again, let's look back at the past, right? At the recent past. How has Giuliani been ruling in Idlib? Right, Giuliani has been in control
Right.
of Idlib for years. At this point, Idlib, a major city on the border with Turkey in the northwest of
Uh-huh.
Syria. How has he been ruling it? Well, Sharia law, first of all. Second of all, he just this year faced very big protests against his rule because Giuliani, this reformed, terrorist, the former deputy commander of the founder of ISIS, Abu Bakr
Yeah.
al-Baghdadi, Giuliani, his right-hand man.
Yeah.
Also, deputy commander of the former founder of Al-Qaeda in Syria. So this man has a checkered past, to say the least.
Yeah.
He has been ruling the northwest of Syria with an iron fist.
Mhm.
Essentially, he controls he enriched himself. He enriched himself reselling humanitarian aid that the UN provides to Idlib every few months or so. He resells it in the black market. He buys property in Turkey, and poverty rate in Idlib 97%. Right? People absolutely sick of his regime in Idlib took to the streets earlier this year. These were quashed, obviously, as you would imagine they would under a regime of Sharia law.
Mhm.
Second of all, he had a purge of his leadership a few months ago, arresting and executing the people in his lower commanders. Some of them picking at them for the who he considered to be plotting against him. Right.
Mhm.
So then you can already see that Giuliani is not exactly a man that has control of his own people. Now, he didn't
Mhm.
have it 6 months ago, 8 months ago. Why would we expect that all of a sudden now he does? Now, as you're saying, right? Because right now in Syria, the people who are in control, so to speak, because I don't think there's any control, are a mishmash of the legitimate Syrian opposition, which existed, in which was persecuted.
Mhm.
You have, ISIS, HTS, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, this armed group, which is essentially, the second coming of Al-Qaeda in Syria.
Right.
You have the Turkestan Islamic Party, this Uyghur Chinese terrorist organization that has its biggest presence is in Syria, right? They have more members, more fighters in Syria than they do back in Xinjiang, where China has been committed this genocide of the Uyghurs. Let's not get into that, but that's where they come from. You have who else? You have groups from Uzbekistan, from Central Asia. You have
Mhm.
Turkish armed groups. You have foreigners, right? Just like a bunch of foreign extremist groups who their goal is to create a caliphate, who their
Right.
goal is to create an Islamic state. It is not to create a free market, democratic republic, diversity friendly, everyone's welcome. That's not their goal. That's not their design. This is not what they're in for. Yes, I mean, obviously, if the money is right, I'm sure they'll be willing to play ball. But
Mhm.
but at some point, you're talking about fundamentalists. You're talking about
Yeah.
extremists. You're talking about people who would more than willing blow themselves up in a crowded market or in a crowded mosque. Just to kill people, right? Not for other reason than just to kill them. And as you are saying, Jamal, we are already seeing this bloodshed happen in Latakia, in the east of Syria. This former stronghold of Assad. Assad, obviously, he's an Alawite, right? This
Mhm. Right.
a religious group, because in West Asia, what you're never going to be lacking for is a new ethno-religious group. There's so many of them. So, and this is why you see so much persecution too. You see in this city, the fighters are parading around in a truck with the ISIS flag, right? Not with the
Yeah.
PS flag, not with the new Syrian flag, with the ISIS flag. You're seeing these executions, summary executions on the side of the road. You are hearing, I mean, Jamal, how can you justify opening up prisons, just all of the doors at once with absolutely no concern about who you are releasing. You are releasing political prisoners alongside everyday criminals and alongside actual terrorists, actual, just on the street to do as they please.
Mm-hmm.
This biggest prison, the one that we've been seeing all of the images from, Setnaya, if I'm not mistaken, the name, it's just a few kilometers from the Lebanese border. This is done with a design to destabilize. This is not, when Ansar Allah, they took power in Yemen in 2014, around that time, after the September Revolution, there were no summary executions. There were no killings on the streets. There were
Right.
no opening up of the prisons and everyone's free and to do as they please. No, the first thing that Ansar Allah did was contact the UN to help draft an actual transitional government. No,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like a transition of
Yeah.
power, which granted them, first of all, a level of legitimacy, and second of all, protected the lives of so many people, right? And this is the group that Western media has, for the past year and a half, been hammering in your head that they are a terrorist organization who hate the West, who want to kill Americans and British and whatever else. And meanwhile, ISIS and Al-Qaeda and all of these head choppers, they're not. They're getting CNN interviews. They're getting prime time interviews on CNN in which the interviewer is wearing the hijab, while they refuse to do the same for the former president of Iran.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. I'm so glad you mentioned that. So in every propaganda exercise, there are people on the ground who CNN and various people will go to who speak perfect English and could tell you how happy they are about the terrorists that have taken over, and that this is exactly what they want to live under anyway. They don't want to, wear bikinis. They don't want to drink alcohol. They want to live under religious rule, especially if you're a woman. And CNN living up to their state media. Listen to what she says. I want to get your take on this. This is fascinating to me. This woman is in Syria, but her English is flawless, absolutely flawless.
Tell me what this feels like.
This is absolutely amazing. After all of these years, we are live on the international TV. This is amazing. This is unspeakable. This is us after 50 years of darkness. This is us after 50 years of death. This is absolutely amazing.
Did you ever imagine? We've had 14 years.
No.
Did you ever imagine?
No. This is not. You can't even cross this idea over your mind. Never. This is actually. It's every day you woke up and you go out of the door and think that I'm gonna die now. Tomorrow I'm gonna die. This
Is that really the life they were living in Syria? You wake up and every moment of the day you're thinking, I'm going to die at this moment. I'm going to die at this moment. And mind you, she's saying this when in 2015, that was the reality. I mean, the reason why so many people were against what is taking place, meaning this fall, is because they saw ISIS rampage all throughout the Middle East, either through Iraq and Syria, and literally putting people in cages and setting them on fire or chopping off. Like, this was stuff that we saw with our own eyes at that point. And she's like, every moment I thought I was going to die. This is the greatest thing in the world that these jihadists have taken over.
I mean, I pray for this woman. I pray for her family. I pray for everyone who is celebrating on the streets, because everyone, first of all, deserves peace, deserves to live in peace.
Obviously, yeah.
And but I feel like reality is going to come crashing down very quickly, because I do not see how you can rein in these maniacs. Like I said, Giuliani, he's not a statesman. And the Syrian opposition, it seems that they are too concerned chopping up the state for their own benefit before actually looking at to see what are these evil bastards that we release on our country even doing on the streets. CNN, it's disgusting at this point. It's just disgusting, right? As you said, well, this girl has perfect English. Thank God CNN was able to find her right on the street. Just
out of the entire crowd, they found that one.
Out of everyone who was there, thank God, they ran into the one person with the perfect English.
Right.
Clarissa Ward, this woman who at this point, why does she even have a microphone in her hand? it's just embarrassing at this point that we're still giving some legitimacy to these fake, bad actors, right? This is, I think,
Yeah.
what we can refer to them. These are just bad actors who are trying to whitewash what we know, these people are, these people in the Syrian government are at this point. As far as, what she's saying about, I felt that I was going to die at every moment. Maybe, but I don't think it was. It was, when you say that, I immediately think to Gaza. I immediately think to the West Bank, and I immediately think to when Israel was dropping hundreds of bombs in Syria just over the past couple of days. I think that was a bit more, I'm gonna die at any moment situation, because people to this moment are right in Gaza. As you said, Jamar, and I think we shouldn't really skip to this. This is cutting off Palestine, right? At this point, Palestine is isolated. This is the real tragedy, right? We talk about winners and losers. There's no bigger loser about what happened in Syria than the Palestinian people themselves. Because at this point, Israel, first of all, the focus has shifted, right? Israel has been very good. They were bad at controlling the narrative when October 7 happened and they started their own genocide. They were really bad. Mm-hmm. They were, for a year, they were just horrible at controlling the narrative.
Well, it's kind of hard to hide.
They've done something, I think, maybe better in the end, which is they gave up on controlling the narrative. What they are doing now is shifting it. They're shifting the attention constantly, right? So now they shifted it to Syria. And meanwhile, in Gaza, the carnage is just as bad as it was a few months ago, if not worse. So this is what these outlets are whitewashing when they talk about this, right? When they talk about a new Syria or etc., is an attempt at just redirect attention. And at this point, you have Lebanon with a gun to its head, right? You have Lebanon literally with a gun to its head, being told what to do. And Lebanon cannot do anything but accept. At this point, Lebanon cannot do anything but accept the new reality. The Speaker of Parliament said by January, we're going to have a president, right? Lebanon has been without a president for like 2 years at this point. And at this point, you believe it. You believe what he says because the pressure is real. Now the reality has come, has been like a bucket of ice water for everyone, right? Because now you have the Zionist genocidal army in the south is still occupying the south of Lebanon, in the east as well now, and ISIS on your borders, right? So you are literally weapons on all sides when you are Lebanon. So, this is the game. This is why I say Israel has won. So when these people celebrate on the streets, they're also celebrating Israel's victory, even if unwittingly.
God, man, this is... I was going to ask you what does this mean for Lebanon, but I guess you just answered that question. Yeah. Lebanon is under threat. Syria has been decapitated. It can't defend itself. I mean, even if Syria can cobble a state together, well, I mean, it doesn't have weapons, not any heavy weapons where it can defend itself. It's basically at the mercy of either Turkey or, for that matter, Israel. It can't even stop Turkey from going further into territory at this point. And it's effectively at the mercy of its surrounding powers. Before I let you go, Iran is fascinating to me. Iran has to know that they're in the crosshairs. They have to know at this point. I mean, you have an Israeli first president coming into office. You have a situation where Hezbollah has basically collapsed, meaning their front line against the hedge of Israel, right on their border now. Well, not on their border, but you know what I mean. It's Hezbollah has been broken, and Syria has been broken at this point. What do you think Iran is thinking here? I mean, for that matter, Iran and Russia, and more to the point. Why has it? I mean, for right now, it seems that Russia has made a deal in order to keep their military assets in the country, at the very least, the naval assets. I heard that Russia had relationships with many of the people that were on the ground going back to the 2015 conflict, and that those relationships basically allowed them to make a deal in order to keep their assets there. What is your take on that? I mean, is that true, false? Do you buy that? Don't buy that? Is it borrowed time?
When we talk, for example, when we talk about the axis of resistance, we're only talking about regional, right? And there's people who like to put Russia in that list too, like an ally. I think Russia is out for itself. in the end, right?
No.
Like many
Yeah.
nations. And I think
And just be clear, I'm not putting Russia in that list.
Yeah,
I'm
no.
thinking
I'm just
Iran,
saying.
Syria, and,
Yeah. I'm just saying that for many years Russia did serve as a bit of an ally, right, an extended member. I think that reality has changed at this point, because this interview from the former head of the CIA on Charlie Rose a few years ago has been making the rounds recently, in which he talks about we need to punish Russia and Iran for what they've done in Syria.
Right.
And what did they do in Syria? They propped up Assad. They propped up the government. They helped the government stay in power for as long as it did. And I think, once Russia and Iran realized that Assad was listening to others, or was, more interested in what the Gulf and by proxy the US was offering, they realized that it's time for us to kind of reorganize our strategy, right? Russia in particular, as you said, I do think there are contacts, and if there aren't direct contacts because Russia has been in this region for years, since 2015,
Yes.
almost 10 years, that the Russian Aerospace Force has been in Syria. Their navy has also been deployed in Syria. So yes, of course there would be contacts, right? The Russian intelligence, they weren't going to be sitting on their hands all of these years. And there's also contacts through Turkey, right? Russia and Turkey do maintain good relations. So I think Russia at this point is trying to pick up the pieces of what is best for them, right? I think Iran, Khamenei just gave a speech. I was just looking at it, and they're saying, first of all, Khamenei says that they had been warning Assad for several months about this plot, and that he didn't listen to them. He said that this was a conspiracy between Israel and the US, of course, the obvious part. And then he also talks about another country in the region that was doing this, but that was, working behind the scenes, but he doesn't name any names. And he says the resistance is going to be stronger, which is the pledge that you need to make. Now, you need to make this pledge. Is it true? Is it not? You need to make this pledge, because this is existential for Iran. And I hope the Iranian planners are realizing at this point that this is existential, that they are coming for their head next. This is not fun and games anymore. Israel is not playing. The United States is not playing. They are out for Iran's head. And they are going to go through Yemen, and they're going to go through Iraq, which is actually, where we need to keep our eyes next. There's so many things happening. We need to keep our eyes everywhere. We need to grow more eyes, because this is so, there's so many elements at play here. But I think what the United States has done in the end, right, and Israel is it's for example, they've managed to cripple the China's Belt and Road Initiative in Syria, right? Remember, Syria was about to be allowed, right? And they had signed a deal for the BRI to cross to Syria. That's gone. That's not going to happen anymore. With Russia, I think they will have an arrangement, because Russia, why would they want to leave the Mediterranean, right? Like they are Mediterranean Sea. I think they would be willing to play ball, and I think these, newfound liberators, neoliberal wonder kids in charge of Syria are going to be willing to play ball with anyone, right? As long as the money is right, why not? Unless, obviously, the United States gives the directive, in which case we know everybody, all of these people fall very quickly. So, Jamal, I think the next few years are about to be war with Iran. This is it. This is where we're headed. There's no putting the genie back in the bottle, because Israel has been a kind of has been a country of its word in a way over the past year. They have said, we're fighting human animals. We're gonna go into Gaza and kill everyone. They did that.
They did.
We're gonna defeat Hezbollah. They didn't defeat Hezbollah, but they put Hezbollah in a very bad position, very bad position. So that still hanging in the air there. They're saying they're gonna go hard against Yemen. I would believe them. They are saying that they've been threatening to attack Iraq, right? And the only reason they haven't attacked Iraq is because of the U.S. Apparently, the U.S. is exerting a lot of pressure, but nothing is going to happen. Now you have this army of ISIS ready in Syria, so it's right next door to Iraq, and that is what opens the path to Iran, right? At this point, I would even start looking at Afghanistan. What are they going to start cooking up in Afghanistan? Because Afghanistan is on the other side of the border with Iran. So, there's just more war. At this point, I do not see a situation in which sustainable peace is achieved, especially after what happened in Syria. Because if it's not direct war against Israel, it is going to be war against ISIS, and it is going to be war against these terror groups that are now spread in the middle of the region, with their tentacles go everywhere.
Any way you look at it, it's chaos. Esteban, man, thank you for this. Yeah, it's a dark day. I got so angry at some of the people on Twitter who were like, hey, Israel is moving into Syria. And it's like, you fucking idiots were cheering it on. Like, meaning many of these people were like cheering, like, yes, this is a great day for Syria and everything else. And then after it happened and Israel moved in and, moving to Damascus, they're like, hey, Israel is moving in. This is not good. It's like, just shut up. It's like, just shut the F up right now. Sit this one out. God, man, Esteban, thank you, man. I appreciate this.
Thank you,
Esteban Carrillo. He is a Beirut-based Ecuadorian journalist and current editor for The Cradle. He was previously with Telesur English. You guys have been doing good work at The Cradle, by the way. I've been following your content, man. Good job, man.
Thank you, Jamal. And we'll talk next time. Bye-bye.
Yeah, go on. Be safe. All right. We have a